Hello, everybody. Hopefully, this should work in a second. It's been a while since I've streamed, so you'll have to forgive me. Been a while since I've streamed, so you'll have echo there. Hey, Aaron. Hold on, let me just tweet about me doing this real quick. I forget to tell people I'm streaming sometimes. Hey, Kristen. Hey, everybody. Oh, yeah, he's back here somewhere. We'll definitely see the pup at some point. He'll make an appearance, I'm sure. He'll probably yell at me at some point. Did you guys check out, I guess you guys were all watching Kat's stream, but Tiffany Adams did some stuff on the Carmelo Anthony case earlier as well. I don't think she's still alive. No, she went out for a couple hours today. Shoot a cool stream. Anyway, yeah, she's in person too. She's actually in Texas right now. She flew to wherever that case is. Collins County, something like that. You did see Kristen, yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this Lil Durk case. I think we're going to start with the, not you, probably this, the government's trial memorandum where they just outline their case against Durk, and then we'll take a look at the indictment. Maybe one or two other things if we have time. I guess it's the first time I've covered Durk, so I should tell people who I am. I'm Jim. I'm a lawyer. I have a little bit of experience in the criminal law. I represented actually two of the YSL co-defendants in post-conviction proceedings. We won on a motion to vacate void sentence, won an appeal. So I know a little bit about cases involving alleged gang culture, lyrics, rappers, conspiracies, and what have you. So slightly qualified, a little bit, hopefully, maybe. Not super familiar with this case yet, but I've been kind of casually following it, so we'll see. Okay, so here we go. Government's trial memorandum. Oh, by the way, I am admitted to practice law in California, including Central District, which is actually where I live, even though most of my criminal law experience is in Georgia. Fortunately, this case also has a bunch of Georgia stuff, so kind of a crossover episode for me. So here we go. Defendants, Durk Banks, DeAndre Wilson, and David Lindsay. There's a fourth defendant, Asa Houston, who was continued. Thank you, Kristen. It's been a while since I've been on. Asa Houston was continued because he got a new lawyer, and the lawyer wasn't going to be able to be prepared in time. So we only have these three defendants in this current trial. They're proceeding on counts 2 through 6. 1 through 7 were severed on August 20th. Yeah, it won't be streamed. I might stop by and check out a couple days. Not a lawyer, but it's going to be there in person too. The charges allege the defendant Banks and other OTF members. I'm not sure how much context to give. We're just going to read this, and then we'll go from there. Other OTF members conspired to kill those believed to be responsible for the death of Davon Bennett, a.k.a. King Von. Is that how you spell his name? I thought there was a Y in there. An OTF member and fellow Black Disciples gang member, including a rival rapper, TB. It's Quando Rondo is the name. Statement of charges and elements. The parties have submitted jointly proposed jury instructions and disputed jury instructions that set forth the parties' respective position on the elements. Government witnesses. The government filed under seal a list of anticipated witnesses. The government anticipates that the government's case in chief will take 11 to 13 days, inclusive of cross, with about 35 witnesses on the list. The parties are continuing to meet and confer regarding possible stipulations that may alleviate the need for certain witnesses to streamline its case and avoid testimony on non-controversial topics. The government has proposed potential stipulations to defense counsel regarding foundational issues concerning seizure and extractions of digital devices. There was some dispute on at least one of Durk's phones, leading to some water. There was a phone seizure from a Georgia GBI seizure in, I think, 2020. Nicole Mormon she's a Georgia lawyer, had to file a declaration about that about a week or two ago. Seizure of surveillance footage, records from Bureau of Prisons and Illinois DOC. The government estimates that these stipulations would reduce its case in chief by 8 to 10 witnesses. Anticipated legal and evidentiary issues. The charged conspiracy to kill Quando Rondo and others responsible for King Von's death continued after the Los Angeles murder. Count 2 of the fourth superseding indictment alleges that defendants engaged in a conspiracy to stalk and kill individuals whom the co-conspirators believed were responsible for the death of King Von, including Quando Rondo. The superseding indictment alleges the conspiracy began on a date unknown, but no later than on or around November 6th, 2020. I actually have 3 in front of me right now, so I'm good to go. At trial, the government expects the evidence will show that the co-conspirators pursued their conspiracy to stalk and kill Quando as follows. On May 2nd, 21, certain co-conspirators attempted to kill him in Blackshear, Georgia. On August 18th and 19th, the co-conspirators... you called it. The co-conspirators stalked and attempted to kill Quando in Los Angeles. That was at the Beverly Center, resulting in... I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Robinson is his last name. SR's murder. And the conspiracy continued after the murder. Specifically, I think that's supposed to say, following the murder of Robinson, the co-conspirators took steps to conceal their role in the death and continued to seek to murder Quando as revenge for the death of Vaughn. Hey, Weppy. Defendant Banks and other co-conspirators' actions after the murder are not only direct evidence to prove the continuation of the conspiracy, but the evidence is also critical to show the defendants did in fact participate in the murder. These United States affirm statements about past events that further a conspiracy. U.S. versus Al-Ahmed Al-Abdelokla, I think. Particularly where the statements are made to keep co-conspirators abreast of an ongoing conspiracy's activities. Oh, this sounds like YSL language. Prompt further action on the part of the conspirators, further the common objectives, further participation in the group's activities, allay a co-conspirator's fears, enhance the power of the conspiracy. Basically just that they're trying to further and consolidate the conspiracy, I guess you could say. Okay, let me see. Proof that the conspiracy continued following the murder will be presented through anticipated cooperator testimony and exhibits. For example, the government will seek to admit Exhibit 125. Not sure where that'll be in. Which is a text thread between a burner phone used by Banks and multiple co-conspirators. That's confusing. I assume they mean the thread is between Banks, who was using a burner phone, and the conspirators, including Defendant Wilson, co-conspirator 4 and 5, specifically on December 25th, on Christmas 2022. Defendant Banks sent a text message and voice recording telling his co-conspirators that an affiliate of Quando reached out to squash the rivalry and ask for peace. Defendant Banks told his co-conspirators he rejected the peace offering, stating, "I'm not hopping on the phone to squash a rivalry because this for Thang and Vaughn." He continued, "Call me about peace, take the piece of the switch." Not great, referencing a machine gun like the one used by the conspirators to kill Quando on August 19th, 22. A switch, for those of you who don't know, is something you add to a handgun to essentially make it fire, essentially like an automatic gun. A voice message Defendant Banks sent to his co-conspirators immediately after this text message crystallized his intent. Defendant Banks reiterated that he rejected the peace offering and made clear he still wanted Quando dead, and your homie Quando can die. As set forth in the parties' proposed jury instructions, the defense has requested a mere presence jury instruction. The government anticipates that Defendant Banks and Wilson will assert that they were not involved in the murder but were merely present or had knowledge of the murder. That makes sense. In addition to proving the defendant's participation in the murder, 125 also rebuts the defendant's claim that they were not involved in the Los Angeles murder. Again, I expect that Banks will, well, what the government also anticipates is that Banks is going to say, I knew about the murder. I'm not particularly upset about the murder. I knew it was going to happen. But I wasn't a conspirator. That's what they're getting at here. Banks and Wilson and others also discussed the conspiracy in a text thread titled The Family. For example, on August 23, 23, the co-conspirators discussed their suspicions that prosecuting witness 1 was ready to snitch on them. And the identity of prosecuting witness 1 was identified. I can't remember whether 1 was, I think it was Grant, Kevon Grant was 1. Or was that 2? I can't remember which one it was. Or whether he was 2 and 1 was the other guy, a Jam. I think Jam's 1, actually. I can't remember. In any event, using the family chat, defendant Banks and Wilson also made statements that the government will argue are direct admissions of their participation in Robinson's murder. In the thread, defendant Banks admitted that crazy blood fellows don't slide or hurt people, leaving it all up to us. Seems like a statement. Jam was 1 and Bonnie was 2. Okay, thank you. In discussing members of O'Block's set of Black disciples. Specifically, defendant Banks stated that O'Block, here, multiple witnesses will testify at trial that King Von was a prominent member of the O'Block gang and OTF. Witnesses will also testify about defendant Banks' frustration with O'Block's failure to slide for Von. I know that if you're not at all familiar with this case, there's a lot of context that you're probably missing, so doing the indictment after this will hopefully clarify some of that. Let me see. Evidence showing the defendants continued to select Kwando after Robinson's murder is material to prove multiple disputed issues, including to show defendant Banks' involvement in the conspiracy, his leadership over the co-conspirators. He decides if there will be peace with Kwando, his motive to avenge King Von's death, and to rebut any suggestion that defendant Banks and Wilson were passive observers of the murder. Okay, use of exhibits. Exhibits may be used by the government in the opening statement, and so long as the opening statement avoids reference to matters that cannot be proved or would be inadmissible, there can be no error, much less prejudicial error. Basically, they're going to confer with the defense as to the exhibits used in the opening statement. I laughed there because that was an issue in YSL when Adrienne Love was supposed to disclose all exhibits that she was going to use in her opening statements. And then when opening statements came around, she used an exhibit that was not shown to the defense in advance. And furthermore, made reference to Brian Stee, somebody named Brian Stee, as representing one of the co-defendants in the case. That very nearly led to a mistrial on the first day. It probably should have been a mistrial. If it hadn't taken a year to select the jury, there's a very, very good chance that would have been a mistrial right off the bat. But fortunately, after that, there's no more misconduct from the prosecution in that case. Okay, the government intends to call witnesses who have entered into plea agreements in which they agree to cooperate with the government. There's some guesses as to who that would be. Probably Grant. Well, we know it's Grant. I'm guessing OTF Jam as well, as Celtics referenced in his message earlier, which I appreciate. The plea agreements each contain a provision that requires the witness to fully cooperate with the government, including by testifying as a witness if called upon to do so. The plea agreements also include provisions requiring the cooperating witnesses to be honest and forthcoming and to render truthful testimony. I'm not going to comment on it. I can't make everything about YSL, but good Lord. Eliciting testimony on direct that a witness entered into a plea agreement that requires truthful testimony may constitute vouching. However, referring to a plea agreement's mandate to be truthful does not constitute vouching for a witness if such references are made in response to an attack on the witness's credibility because of his plea bargain, including an attack in defense counsel's opening statement. Hey, Kristen, thanks for that. Here, the government anticipates the defense counsel will attack one or more of the cooperating witnesses' credibility, perhaps as early as opening statement. I mean, that would make sense. If the defense does so, the government should be permitted to elicit testimony regarding the truthful testimony provisions of the respective plea agreement during direct examination as appropriate. I hate this. This is ridiculous. It is pronounced with a hard C. I was thinking the Boston Celtics, but Celtics is definitely definitely the correct pronunciation. Thank you for that, Kristen. I really appreciate it. I haven't streamed in like 6 months now. It's been a while, so I appreciate you guys continuing to support. I'll definitely be trying to do more. I'm probably going to go in person to at least a good chunk of the days, so I'll probably do little streams after. I'll probably steal from I'm Not a Lawyer, but because she's better than me at this stuff. Man, I don't know if I made that Moontooth emoji yet. Okay, yeah, what I was saying was it's kind of ridiculous that these witnesses are going to be testifying in a manner consistent with what the government wants. And so a provision that says the plea agreement is contingent on truthful testimony doesn't really alleviate the concern that the witnesses are just saying what the government wants. The defense would be using the plea agreement to impeach the state's witnesses, and it would have to be the state that would punish the witnesses for violating or not testifying truthfully. Yeah, exactly, Matthew. Like if the testifying witness testifies untruthfully but favorably to the prosecution, there would be no consequences, presumably. There'd be no recourse for the defense just because the plea agreement requires them to testify truthfully. It's kind of a I don't know, an incentive issue. Duplicity. Defendant banks recently filed a motion to dismiss count 2 as duplicitous, which the court denied as untimely. In reviewing an indictment for duplicity, the court is to assess whether the indictment itself can be read to charge only one violation in each count. Duplicity is the joining of a single count of 2 or more distinct and separate offenses. One vice of duplicity is that a jury may find a defendant guilty on a count without having reached a unanimous verdict on the commission of a particular offense. I don't know why they're arguing this since it was already denied. Count 2 is not duplicitous. An indictment may allege several substantive offenses in a conspiracy count because conspiracy can have more than one object. The allegation is a single count of a conspiracy to commit several crimes is not duplicitous. For the conspiracy is the crime, and that is one, however diverse its objects. That makes sense. You can have a single conspiracy to do many things. Actually, that reminds me. There's an interesting RICO case out of Gwinnett County, Georgia, that's being argued for the Georgia Supreme Court on Tuesday. I'm going to do a stream on that. It all relates to a conspiracy. The RICO charge was dismissed. So we're going to come back to that on Tuesday. I might do a preview stream on that too. The Soldiers of Christ RICO, if you want to Google that. Consistent with black letter law. What? I can't even recognize. Oh, I recognize Farmer. But what's this one? Oh, that's ASAP Taco. That's ASAP Rocky's lawyer. Oh, what a day that was. See, think about the ASAP Rocky thing that was so crazy. It was like there was a moment where Taco and what's his face, the scumbag prosecutor, were about to fight. I can't think of his name. And ASAP Rocky, the defendant who was charged with shooting somebody, also in Los Angeles, was actually the one breaking up the 2 lawyers. I've never seen the defendant have to break up 2 lawyers before. That was a new one for me. I really enjoyed that. That was certainly a rare moment. And one of my favorite things about the A$AP Rocky case was the prosecutor, who is supposedly a cold case specialist. He has a checkered history of wrongful convictions. And there's a hey cat. We're talking about A$AP Taco right here. I'm on a tangent. What's the name of that prosecutor? The one I don't like, the one who's obsessed with the donut place? That was Bruce Harvey. I recognize that one, Matthew. John Lewin, exactly. So the defense lawyer, the appellate lawyer who got one of Lewin's cases overturned, named Alan Yockelson. Al Yockelson. He's from San Diego. And he was like in the Twitter comments, in the YouTube comments, like hating on John Lewin. But like nobody knew who he was, so he's just anonymously hating on Lewin for the love of the game, and I really respected that. You should follow him on Twitter, by the way. I think it's Al or Alan Yockelson. But that kind of hate, that kind of like anonymous hate that you're just really into it for, you love to see it. Okay. Let's see. Even if to duplicitous, the court may provide an instruction requiring all members of the jury to agree as to which of the distinct charges the defendant actually committed. That's a good practice. Okay, that's a good idea. So that's probably not going to come up for some time now. I think that also came up in YSL, actually. Yeah, it did. It was in the jury forum. We didn't see that because the jury just checked not guilty for the RICO charges. But there was actually, I might even be able to show it to you. Somewhat different. I don't know if I have it open. I think it would be on Shannon's. I can find you a reasonable example of what that looks like. No, that's just the verdict. Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, basically they'll want to find a specific things that were run to. I forgot about Ron. They'll want to find the specific objects of the conspiracy that the defendants were found to have committed beyond a reasonable doubt. So now we're going to take a look at the indictment. There have been 5 indictments so far, which is a lot of indictments. I'm sure there's been more, but that's a lot. So there are a few notable things in the early versions that I wanted to show you. Make sure you can see this. Yeah. So this is the first indictment, June 24 grand jury. A couple things. The first thing you'll notice is there's no Durk Banks, aka Lil Durk, who is in an interesting position in this trial because he is the others were more directly involved, allegedly, in the killing that's at the center of the case, whereas Banks was more of the figurehead, as alleged, kind of the leader rather than a direct participant. And again, just taking the government at their word, I would say the evidence against these defendants is stronger. I haven't actually seen the evidence, but the evidence as it's been sort of characterized by the government is stronger against these guys than against Durk. But yeah, in the initial indictments, you'll see that there is no Lil Durk, no Durk Banks. It's the first superseding indictment, second indictment in total. Also the June 24 grand jury, apparently. It's kind of strange. Wait, did these all say June 24 grand jury? Okay, no, this one was updated. This is the YSL indictment. Don't need that. Okay, first superseding indictment. This is the first one where we have Durk Banks. YP. He was indicted in the second indictment, the first superseding indictment. One thing I want to show, there have been some substantial changes to the indictment. What I want to show is this one, 6-paragraph first superseding indictment. Following the attempted murder of Kwando and the murder of Robinson, defendant Banks sought to commercialize the death by rapping about his revenge on Kwando with music that explicitly references audio from a news clip taken shortly after the death, where Kwando screamed "no, no" after seeing the dead body. Told me they got an Addy, go, go, got location, go, go. Green light, look on the news, you screaming "no, no." So what's interesting about this is that this, shortly after this indictment, that is large. We don't need that. That's better. Shortly after this indictment was returned, Drew Findling, who is Banks's lawyer, entered evidence that this was actually recorded about a year or so before the murder, so it could not possibly have been in reference to the murder. There's another lawyer named Steve Sadow, who's also from Georgia, because this case is entirely about Georgia now, who is actually kind of critical of Drew for raising the issue so early on rather than preserving the error for the jury, which I thought was interesting. Steve Sadow, some of you may know from his representation of clients such as the rapper Gunna and the president Donald Trump. He has a very diverse set of clients. I think he also represented 50 Cent at one point. Let me see here. Let me see. No, I don't know. He represented T.I., Donald Trump, and Gunna. Very normal set of clients. Yeah, Steve Sadow's a legendary Georgia lawyer, though. But there's some criticism from Steve towards Drew on that. There was also an issue. I don't think this is in the current indictment. Yeah, we'll get to this later. Anyway, this is the second superseding indictment, and it's fairly similar to the prior one, but you'll see the government just backtracked and took that paragraph out because, you know, they knew that they couldn't show that these lyrics had anything to do with the murder, so they deleted it in the superseding indictment. So this was, let me see, May 1st, 25. Now, the third superseding indictment, fourth indictment overall, is where you start to see another change in the defendants. We have Durk, Wilson, Lindsay, and Houston. Compared to the prior version, you'll see there's no longer Kevon Grant or Keith Jones. I have a client that has a name that is not literally, it's actually 2 letters different from this. So if I mess up this name, it's not because I don't know his name, it's because I say a name that's basically identical to that name all day long. It's the case I've been working on the most recently. But yeah, Grant is aka Bonnie, as you see here. He's confirmed to be one of the witnesses now. I feel like maybe we should figure a case out before bringing it. That's crazy talk. So Jones and Grant are no longer defendants. They'll likely be. We know for a fact that Bonnie's a witness. I assume Jones is as well. I assume they have plea deals because they're not listed in the third superseding indictment or the fourth. The third and fourth are basically the same except for one minor change. Make this a little bigger for you. Okay. Fourth superseding indictment, that's the operative indictment, the current indictment. We'll read through this one, if I can keep my voice and not get distracted with John Lewin tangents. One thing I wanted to flag that I found interesting, this is what my tweet was about. I don't know if it's going to be of any substance, any consequence, but I generally don't know the answer. If there are any lawyers or experts in the chat, you can feel free to correct me. But like I said, Grant and Jones are no longer clearly defendants in this case. They're not mentioned in the caption as defendants. But then we go into the body of the indictment, and the body of the indictment versus the caption of the indictment, something I probably mentioned on 90% of the videos on this channel. Let me see here. Here we go. Defendants, Durk Banks, aka, I love how they defined aka for us. That's very helpful, very necessary. Wilson, Houston, and Kevon Grant, they took him out of caps, it seems. But like he's still listed as a defendant, which is kind of strange. See here. He was in caps, but then they took him out of caps. But they still listed him as a defendant, even though he's not in the caption listed as a defendant. And I'll show you a few more examples. Jones is down here as well. Keith Jones, still listed as a defendant. Defendants Wilson, Houston, Grant. Oh, sorry. Defendants David Brian Lindsay, A.K. Brown Eyes, and Keith Jones, and co-conspirators 7 through 8. So still listed as a defendant, even though they're not on the caption. And if you go down further, yeah, and others known as doing a lot of work there. There's some of these where Grant still looks very, yeah, here's one. At the direction of Defendant Banks, Defendant Grant would procure cars, ski masks, and firearms. Some of them look very clearly referring to Grant as a defendant, even though it's this weird, like a lowercase defendant thing. I think it's strange. I don't know if that means that Grant is still bound by the, still indicted under the second superseding indictment, and is still a defendant, even though he wasn't indicted as to the fourth superseding indictment. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't think it'd be of any consequence because the government could just dismiss the charges anyway. But I thought that was interesting. But okay, this is where a lot of the context will be. So if you're not familiar with this case, hopefully this will help out. I think it only counts if it's in all caps with each letter individually underlined. That's exactly how it goes. Actually, I did some research that I want to show just so I can get credit for it. It is well established that the caption is completely surplusage and does not control the body of the indictment. Same thing here as 2021 case. Again, the indictment citation to the name title of the crime was mere surplusage. See, the title of the crime is not binding. What matters is the substance of the indictment. And as I mentioned here, in the substance of the indictment, Grant and Jones are still listed as defendants, which to me suggests that they are actually indicted in this fourth superseding indictment, even though they're not listed up here. Talking about the substance of the indictment is one of my favorite things to do. I got an example of another case where the substance of the indictment was an issue. Just as an example. I just picked this out of a hat, completely random. This is the Weissall case. There is indictment. You see here, it says 133. Possession of firearm by convicted felon, previously convicted of felony involving the use or possession of a firearm. This actually doesn't really describe a crime at all. But 133 was sort of the caption, kind of the top level description, but what actually matters is the substance, this part down here, where they're describing what actually was the charge. And, well, I'm not going to read all this, but what this describes is a violation of a different statute, a lesser included statute. And so even though what it says up here and what it says down here is 133. It doesn't matter what it says in the caption. Doesn't matter what it says anywhere. What matters is the substance of the indictment. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Kendrick was acquitted. Well, there's a directed verdict on the 133 because it wasn't charged here. And then he was acquitted on 131. So Doug actually won this count twice, which contributed to his 111% win rate in that case, getting 10 acquittals on 9 charges. But again, the substance of the indictment is what matters. And in the substance, it seems at least arguable that Grant and Jones were charged, which is interesting to me. I don't know, just a tangent. Okay, here we go. The racketeering enterprise. Banks, also known as Durk, January Wilson's Didi, Asa Houston, who is still charged, but he's going to be part of a separate trial down the road, and Kevon Grant, who is witness 2, and others unknown to the grand jury, were members and associates of a criminal organization engaged in, among other things, acts and threats involving murder, attempted murder, robbery, and trafficking in controlled substances. So you can see this. Yeah. In around 2010, Banks formed an organization called OTF, Only the Family, which, among other things, produced and sold the hip-hop music of artists primarily from Chicago. After the formation of OTF, a subset of members and associates, hereinafter the Banks gang enterprise, engaged in acts and threats of violence at the direction of defendant Banks, including murder and attempted murder, to maintain and enhance their status in the Banks gang enterprise and to be rewarded by defendant Banks through economic benefits, including money, lucrative music opportunities, and jewelry. This doesn't really make sense. It says the Banks gang enterprise is the subject of the sentence, so this should be its. But you know what? That's fine. We don't need to worry about that. The Banks gang enterprise, including its leadership members and associates, constituted an enterprise, as that term is found in 18 U.S.C. 1959. That is a group of individuals associated in fact, although not a legal entity, which engaged in the activities which affected interstate and foreign commerce. That's why it's a federal case. The Banks gang enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the enterprise, as further alleged below. Sorry, I hear a puppy making noise behind me. Come here. Okay, here we go. I know we got a puppy request, so here we go. Okay, defendant Banks was the leader of the Banks gang enterprise. Defendants Wilson, Houston, and Grant, and co-conspirators 2 through 6. Remember in the first indictment, Banks was co-conspirator 1. That's why it starts at 2. The Banks gang enterprise. Defendants Lindsay Jones and 7 through 8 were individuals associated with members of the Banks gang enterprise. So not members, but associates. Banks formed the Banks gang enterprise by recruiting among others violent members and affiliates of the Black Disciples gang, including Wilson, from different neighborhood blocks and in around the Chicago area. Defendant Banks and Wilson and co-conspirators 2 through 6 were members, associates, or affiliates of the Black Disciples gang, who were associates with the Black Disciples. Members and associates of the Banks gang enterprise would use violence to preserve and promote defendant Banks and the enterprise's power and influence, including influence and or control of the BD-controlled neighborhoods in Chicago, and to provide security and protection for Banks, including protection from rivals of Banks. The gang enterprise committed violence, including murder and attempted murder, and threats to commit murder to promote the enterprise and to seek revenge against its rivals, including members of the Gangster Disciples gang and individuals who harmed, attempted to harm, or disrespected members and associates of the Banks gang enterprise. Let me see. So the feds gave them that name? No. The Banks gang enterprise, for sure. For example, following the November 2020 killing of King Von, DB, that was in Atlanta. I think it was in Atlanta. It was in Georgia for sure, outside of a hookah bar. who's a member of the Black Gang Enterprise and the BDs, and a close friend and associate of Durk, defended Banks and other Enterprise members conspired to murder those whom they perceived as responsible for King Von's death, including Quando Rondo, as further alleged in counts 1 through 7 below. Maybe I should show you guys. Many of you will know I'm just going to find a random article about the killing so you guys can see it. First one that popped up here. Hey, Keisha. Man, it has been a while since I've done this. Good Lord. Oh, that doesn't look right. Swap the cover. There we go. So early morning exchange outside Atlanta Hookah Lounge. I think it was about 3 in the morning. GBI was investigating the shooting because police officers ended up firing their weapons. 3:30 in the morning, Monaco Hookah Lounge. So you can see here, this was some time ago. At this time, our investigators believe King Von was shot during the initial shootout between the two groups of males prior to police responding and attempting to stop the shooting. Initially, King Von was not located at the scene, but arrived at a hospital shortly after the shooting via private vehicle, APD said. So basically, did they murder someone in LA? Yeah, that's eventually what my pens are talking to me like the Green Lantern mask right now. See the retro? This is actually right here. This is one of my go-tos. I think that's the Metalsmith Retro 51. I use the same model of pen myself. Big fan. I said I wasn't going to get sidetracked, but here we are. King Von, whose legal name is Davon Bennett, DB, in the indictment, has charged twice on the top hip-hop albums. So, randomly, LeBron James tweeted in here. Chance the Rapper, also from Chicago. GBI is investigating the officer's involvement. So again, a lot of this comes back to Atlanta, as it always does with me. And Quando Rondo was he was at the scene along with another guy named, I can't remember his real name, Lil Tim. Okay, here we go. But that is what is at the heart of a lot of this. Okay. Defendant Banks and the leadership of the Banks Gang Enterprise, including Wilson and Co-Conspirator 5, recruited other gang members to commit violence for the Enterprise, including defendants Lindsay and Jones and Co-Conspirator 2. Banks funded the criminality and violence committed by members and associates of the gang enterprise, including by facilitating the purchase of stolen cars to facilitate violent acts. You know, I gotta say, I was kind of hesitant to always compare this case to YSL because it's kind of obvious. But like, it actually is kind of remarkable how many of even the facts, not just the facts that we're talking about, like lyrics, labels, gangs, but even now we're getting into cars being purchased to facilitate a murder, which is kind of at the centerpiece of YSL, the killing of Donovan Thomas. Okay. Banks funded the criminality and violence committed by members and associates of the Banks enterprise, including by facilitating the purchase of stolen cars to facilitate violent acts. Specifically, defendant Banks would cause the purchase of stolen cars, which enterprise members referred to as sliders or hot cars. To avoid law enforcement detection, members and associates of the Banks Gang Enterprise would use sliders and fake license plates to commit violent acts against their opponents and rivals, which enterprise members frequently referred to as ops. I've never usually see it spelled with 2 P's, but that's okay. Enterprise violence, particularly shootings, was often referred to by members as drills or sliding. Defendant banks also funded the criminality and violence committed by members and associates of the gang enterprise, including by facilitating the purchase of firearms and flights to travel to location to kill the enterprise's rivals, funding the purchase of distribution quantities of illegal drugs, and rewarding violence committed for the benefit of the gang enterprise. Banks funded the purchase of controlled substances for distribution in, among other places, Chicago and Georgia, by members, associates, and affiliates of the gang enterprise to secure the members, associates, and affiliates' loyalty and willingness to provide continued protection and to engage in violent acts against the ops. Banks provided the monetary and other assistance described up to members of the gang enterprise to secure their loyalty and their willingness to provide protection and retribution against rivals of defendant banks in the enterprise. Banks, Wilson, Houston, Lindsay, and others, including various members of the gang enterprise, engaged in the following acts of violence in furtherance of the enterprise. The attempted murder of Victim 1 in Atlanta, Georgia, on or about February 5th, 2019, by, among others, defendant banks, King Von, and co-conspirator 6, which was motivated by a dispute over the purchase of a stolen car. Specifically, members of the enterprise, including co-conspirator 6, confronted Victim 1 about a stolen car that Victim 1 had sold co-conspirator 6. Co-conspirator 6 demanded a refund. Well, somebody sells you a stolen car, you might want to get a refund. When Victim 1 refused to pay, co-conspirator 6 attempted to rob him. After Victim 1 resisted, members of the enterprise, including Banks and Vaughn, produced firearms and began shooting at the victim, striking and wounding him. And again, this example is kind of an expansion. The original case related to the 2022 killing. This is kind of worked in the later versions of the indictment to broaden the case. But ostensibly, this doesn't seem to have a ton to do with the Los Angeles killing. Same with this item here. The murder of Victim 2, a rival gang member in Chicago, on or about January 27, 22, by, among others, co-conspirators 7 and 8, which was motivated by the promise to pay and receipt of a reward from defendant banks and members of the enterprise. Following the murder of Victim 2, on or about February 2nd, 22, co-conspirators 7 and 8 discussed obtaining payment for killing Victim 2 from defendant banks and the enterprise. Specifically, co-conspirator 8 sent a message to 7 stating, "What's up with OTF? What do you mean they're not paid?" In response, co-conspirator 7 responded, "We waiting." Banks comes up here on the 17th. On or about February 17th, co-conspirator 7 traveled to a location in and around Chicago where Banks was recording the music video for Music Song 1. Well, that's a music song and not one of those other kinds of songs. And being interviewed. Defendant Banks brought approximately $1 million in cash to the location, which was displayed as defendant Banks was being interviewed. At the time, multiple members and associates of the enterprise were present, including Wilson and Jones, and co-conspirators 4 and 5. Co-conspirator 7 subsequently created a social media post in which he displayed his monetary reward from the bank's gang enterprise and played an excerpt of Defender Banks' Music Song 1 about stalking and murdering a rival, as depicted in the screenshot below. This is quoting Aha, the song. That looks like significantly less than $1 million to me. I don't know about that, but what have you. As revenge for the killing of King Von, the conspiracy to commit murder and the attempted murder of Guando in Blackshear, Georgia, on or about May 2nd, 21. By, among others, members of the gang enterprise, including Banks and Grant. As revenge for the killing of Vaughn, the conspiracy to stalk and murder Quando, the stalking and attempted murder of Rondo, and the murder of Robinson in L.A. on or about August 19, 22. Through phone calls, texts, social media posts, and lyrics, members and associates of the enterprise, including Banks and Wilson, would boast about and celebrate violence committed by members, associates, and affiliates of the enterprise, and to taunt and disrespect rivals of Banks and the Banks gang enterprise, including by mocking rivals who had been killed. The enterprise would commit these violent and boastful acts for the purpose of, among other things, preserving. I'm sorry, it's just exactly like a YSL case, like down to the word. Preserving, protecting, and promoting the enterprise, enhancing the reputation of its members and associates, and enriching defendant banks and the enterprise's members and associates, including by commercializing the violence in public social media, music videos, and lyrics. 2, recruiting other individuals to join the enterprise. 3, intimidating and retaliating against defendant banks and the enterprise rivals. And 4, preserving and expanding the power and influence of the enterprise in Chicago and Atlanta, among other places. C, means and methods of the enterprise. The means and methods by which defendant banks Wilson and Houston and other members and associates of the enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the enterprise included the following. A, defendant banks would place bounties on individuals that he and other Banks Gang enterprise members wanted to kill and or reward members of the enterprise who were willing to conspired to attempted to commit and or committed acts and threats of violence against Banks' rivals, including members of the Gangster Disciples Gang and those associated with King Von's murder, with money. Sorry, I just got a funny message. With money and other economic benefits, including placement in Banks' and OTF's music videos, lucrative music opportunities, and jewelry. Members and associates of the gang enterprise committed, including through the use of sliders, attempt to commit, conspire to commit, and threaten to commit acts involving violence, including murder, attempted murder, robbery, theft, trafficking, obstruction, witness tampering, to promote a climate of fear and to preserve, protect, promote, and expand the Banks Gang enterprise's criminal operations. Members and associates of the gang enterprise would take steps to conceal their criminality by, among other things, using sliders, coded language, encrypted messaging applications, and burner phones. Members and associates of the Banks Gang enterprise, including Banks Wilson, would consider cooperation with law enforcement snitching, would refer to witnesses and informants as snitches or rats, and would take steps to intimidate witnesses and suspected government informants and attempt to influence their testimony to prevent incriminating testimony against the enterprise. So, count 1. Hold on, let me pull this up. This is the Vicar statute. Violent crimes and aid of racketeering activity. This was added kind of at the last minute, very late on in the process. Count 1 was actually severed from the this trial of the case. 1 and 7 were severed because they were brought so late on. So I'm not going to read. We're not going to read it because count 2 is what has the majority of these substantial allegations. So the grand jury re-alleges A through C of the introductory allegations. That's what we did read. Object of the conspiracy. Beginning on date unknown but no later than November 6, 2020. Continuing to at least in or around August of 2023 in Los Angeles County, within the Central District of California and elsewhere. Banks, Wilson, Lindsay, and Houston and co-conspirators known and unknown conspired and agreed with each other with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, and place under surveillance with intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate. Use facilities of interstate and foreign commerce to engage in a course of conduct that would place such person in reasonable fear of death and serious bodily injury, and would attempt to cause, and would be reasonably expected to cause substantial emotional distress to that person in violation of 18 U.S.C. 2261. It's basically a stalking statute. Let me get the exact text here. 18 U.S.C. Make sure there's not anything I'm missing. Is that right statute? Sorry, I was just thrown off because Count 2 up here lists 18 USC 371, which is just conspiracy. 18, but then down here it gives 2261 A2. Not sure if I'm just missing something. Sorry, I didn't catch this before, so I'm kind of doing this on the fly. No, this is count 2. So I'm sure this is riveting television here. Yeah, it's confusing. I don't know why they did it that way. It's kind of like a game. USC, the count. So count 2 apparently is 371, which is conspiracy. But I think the language that they used is from this lower, where is it? 2261. Yeah, this 2261 is the... Okay, I guess they're charging it as conspiracy, but using 2261. And then using 2261 as count 3. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I get it now. So 2 is basically conspiracy to commit the third act. That makes sense. I get it now. Very good. I get it now. Took me a second. So basically conspiracy to violate the stalking statute is what that is. Okay. Means by which the object of the conspiracy was to be accomplished. Okay, did I read this already? I lost my track. No, I didn't read this. Okay. Following the death of King Von on November 6, 2020, defendant Banks and other co-conspirators, including Wilson and co-conspirator 2, would discuss seeking revenge for King Von's death, including murdering the individuals whom the co-conspirators believed were involved and or responsible for the death, including Quando Rondo. Defendant Banks would place bounties on individuals that he and other co-conspirators wanted to kill, including Quando. As part of the bounty, co-conspirators noted and unknown, including defendants Banks and Wilson, would promise to pay anyone who took part in the killing and or reward such individuals. Co-conspirators noted and unknown, including defendants Banks and Wilson, would recruit others, including Lindsay, Houston, Jones, and Grant. See, again, like I mentioned before, they're still referred to as defendants. Jones and Grant are. And co-conspirator 2 to find, track, and kill TB. At the direction of defendant Banks, defendant Grant would procure cars, ski mask, and firearms that would be used by co-conspirators to find, track, and kill TB. So again, this is expected to be a witness, defendant Grant, but we'll get into that later. Using a credit card associated with OTF, co-conspirator 3 would purchase airplane tickets for the co-conspirators to fly to California and murder TB. Quando. The defendants, again, these are notably Wilson, Lindsay, Houston, and Jones are the ones who flew from Chicago. They actually flew to San Diego, but Dirk Banks wasn't with them. So my understanding is that the evidence against these 4 is going to be a bit stronger, although Jones probably has a deal at this point. Wilson, Lindsay, Houston, Jones, Grant, again, no Banks, would travel throughout Los Angeles County via cars, including a slider with a fraudulent license plate procured by defendant Grant to find, track, and kill Quando Rondo. So again, No mention of Durk, which again is why I mentioned at the start that the case against him is a little bit more, it's a step removed than it is for the other defendants. Wilson, Lindsay, Houston, Jones, and Grant in co-conspirator 2 would communicate via cell phone, including through encrypted calls, to coordinate logistics. This according to plan. Lindsay, Jones, and co-conspirator 2 would fire multiple shots at TB, killing his cousin Robinson, who was a passenger in the vehicle. Co-conspirators, including Banks and Wilson, would boast about and celebrate their violence, including defendant Banks telling defendant Wilson via text that fellows don't slide or hurt MFRs, leaving it all up to us. I believe this is somewhat out of context from what I remember seeing about the message. Hold on, let me check that real quick. I could have sworn there was something, this was used before. Let me see. No, I must have read that in the prior. I think that was in the trial memo where I read that. Hold on, let me pull that up actually. We'll compare that with what we have here. Where was I? Let me just close these. I know some of you are surprised to see me close tabs, but I do actually close tabs sometimes. Interesting that they just left this part out of the quote. I wonder why they did that. But again, it seems like Banks' involvement is at best after the fact, which is interesting. This also appears to be in 2023. So this quote is from a year, well, not a year, 8 or 9 months after the fact. So they didn't give the date, which is kind of strange. Definitely makes it, and I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but it's certainly less compelling than if it had been the next day, the day after the killing, or a week after the killing. But that's what trials are for. Overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy, my favorite thing. On or about the following dates in furtherance of the conspiracy and to accomplish its object, Banks, Wilson, Lindsay, and Houston, and others known and unknown. This is kind of funny because that encapsulates literally every living person. You could just say others. That'd be fine. Committed various overt acts in Los Angeles County within the Central District of California and elsewhere, including but not limited to the following. So the whole indictment is basically written like a RICO case, but they can't charge RICO. Yeah, I mean, it's a conspiracy. There's some overlap between conspiracy and RICO. But yeah, it is written like a RICO. On November 7th, 2020, the day after an associate of Quando Rondo. Is that Lil Tim? I always look at Lil Tim. I think it's Lil Tim, right? Not Lil Pab. Yeah, Lil Tim was the shooter of King Von. Allegedly. I don't know if that's confirmed. The day after an associate of Quando Rondo shot and killed King Von, defendant Banks texted co-conspirator 3, I can't let this slide. I ain't letting shit slide. King Von dying turned me into a different animal. Following the killing of King Von on November 6, 2020, defendant Banks, using coded language, told co-conspirators, including Wilson and co-conspirator 2, 4, and 5, that he would pay a bounty or a monetary reward to anyone who took part in the killing of Quando. And again, I'd say that this is interesting here is that this was, 2 years-ish before the killing. So, up to the, yeah, I'm going to keep saying state, up to the prosecution to tie that in concretely to the actual killing, given the passage of time. On or before January 21st, 21, defendant Banks filmed and starred in an unreleased clip. I don't know if you can star in something that's unreleased. of a music video titled Red Man, in which defendant Banks is depicted chasing and shooting an actor who looks substantially similar to TB. In the video, as depicted in the below screenshots, defendant Banks first views multiple online posts relating to Vaughn's death after defendant Banks, who's then wearing a mask, fires multiple gunshots. There was a rapper named Redman. Directly at the TB lookalike and executes the victim at short range. This exact thing happened in YSL. Although, of course, the state chose not to prosecute the guy that portrayed himself killing the victim in that case. Because why would you do that? The video reveals that defendant Banks is both the shooter and the getaway driver who flees the crime scene. See, this is not particularly compelling to me because, Banks isn't even alleged to have done the shooting, so this seems, and it was a year and a half before the shooting actually happened. I'm skeptical of whether juries buy this stuff. I think it depends upon the jury you get and where you are, but I think juries are skeptical of lyrics and music videos in general, more so than prosecutors expect. But we'll see. On or about May 2nd, 21, defendant Banks and Grant, co-conspirator 6, conspired to kill TB, resulting in multiple co-conspirators following... I always see TB as Turtle Boy. Following Quando Rondo and his entourage after Quando Rondo's concert near Blackshear, Georgia. I don't even know where Blackshear, Georgia is. Where is that? I've only been to Georgia twice. I have had more clients in Georgia than times I've been to Georgia. I've actually won more Georgia cases than times I've been to Georgia. Tuberculosis. Oh, is this by Brunswick? Oh, yeah. People live there? Huh. The city of Blackshear is the county seat of Pierce County, Georgia. As of the 2020 census, the city had a population of 3,506. Part of the Waycross Micropolitan Statistical Area. Yeah, there's a Waycross Judicial Circuit, which includes Brunswick. I think Brunswick's where most of that happens, but interesting. There you go. Waycross, or Brunswick, Georgia. Blackshear, Georgia, rather. I went to Georgia once when I was 16, got mugged by two guys with guns, so I'm not going back. I'm sorry about that. Next time we meet up, I'll give you your money back. Yeah, that sounds traumatic. That's a good reason not to go back. Ooh, I just got an Amber Alert. That's concerning. Wait, what day did the killing happen? Wasn't that August 19th? Oh, this is actually the 4-year anniversary today. It was 4 years ago today that this happened. I didn't even put that together. Sorry, I saw the date on the Amber Alert and I realized it was the same date as the killing. Okay, sorry about the Blackshear, Georgia / Brunswick. Okay, no, actually I'm not sorry because I have one more thing to say. There's a case in Brunswick, which is Glynn County, Georgia. It's like southeast Georgia. There is a detective with whom I am familiar who was the lead detective in a case prosecuting a rather eccentric pastor. The pastor was accused, I think I told Matthew about this case. The pastor is accused of touching situations he shouldn't have been touching, and accused of touching 2 situations he shouldn't be touching. One of them denied that it happened. The other one gave a date of the incident that basically wasn't possible because basically the pastor wasn't working at the church in question at the time the event happened. And the lead detective apparently suppressed evidence of, which, I'm not going to say it would completely exonerate the guy, but it would certainly strongly cast some doubt on his guilt. And Glynn County, which is part of the same judicial circuit as Blackshear, is known for this sort of thing, particularly this detective. Big fan of this detective. But yeah, I might do some coverage of that in the future. We'll see how that goes, if anything comes of it. But okay, so stuff going on in Blackshear gas station. Stay away from Georgia gas stations. That's where it goes down. Like half of YSL happened at gas stations. Does he wear a cowboy hat? I don't know. On August 18, 2022, one or more co-conspirators, including Banks and co-conspirator 4, learned that Wanda was visiting California and staying at a hotel in Los Angeles. On August 18th, Banks and Grant. So again, this is Banks and Grant. Grant is he's going to be a witness, a.k.a. Vonnie. At least still listed as defendant here. So Banks and Grant are separate from the other guys who flew from Chicago to San Diego. But Banks and Grant flew from Miami to Los Angeles on a private jet so that Banks and Grant could help coordinate the murder. I should say that I understand that Banks was in California, but I believe he flew to Miami for like a day and then flew back to Southern California. So it's not clear to me. Actually, I think it was in the second indictment. Hey, Aaron. See, actually, as soon as you get here and I switch to some lyric evidence that was cut out of the indictment. Yeah, whatever. We'll get to that later. But I believe he was already in Southern California, and then he was returning. On the 18th, Banks and co-conspirator 5 asked co-conspirator 2 to travel to Southern California later that day for the purpose of murdering Wanda Rondo. And I heard you talking about a cop withholding evidence. Oh, yeah, that also makes sense. Retired cop, actually. I'm surprised he's still alive. He's been retired for... The case that I'm working on with him goes back to like 2008 or 2009. And I think he was like an older detective even back then. But he's still involved in this new case. He's still around. On August 18, 2022, Defendant Wilson, on behalf of Defendant Banks, recruited defendants Lindsay and Jones. I believe these are alleged to be members of a different gang. They're not part of the gang enterprise, I believe. Traveled to California for the purpose of murdering TV, and helped facilitate such travel by, among other things, texting co-conspirator 3 biographical information about defendants Lindsay and Jones so that co-conspirator 3 could book flights on to Southern California. I want to know who it is. I will talk about this case, my case in Brunswick, Georgia, at some point, probably sooner than later. I'm hoping to have something filed, either a habeas or a extraordinary motion for new trial this year. I'm still working. The DA's office has been cooperative. I'm still working on getting some documents from the DA's office about that case. But it was 2009 conviction. The crazy thing, the client's younger than I am, and I was like a sophomore in college when this happened, and he was 18 when he didn't commit this murder. It's really stupid. It's a dumb case. He's very obviously innocent, and it's not just that he's innocent. It's like we know who the person who did it is, which makes it so much worse. It's one thing where it's like, you know, maybe there's a question of evidence and, you know, you're fighting to exonerate somebody and you'd be in a situation where you'd like leave the family with no answers as to what happened. But in this case, it's very, very clear who did actually do the thing. So it's kind of a disappointing case. But yeah, I'll definitely be talking about that at some point. You guys will also recognize the lawyer I'm working on it with if you followed YSL closely. He was involved in the YSL case, so some of you recognize the name. Defendant Wilson on behalf of Banks. Yeah, we've read that already. Oh yeah, I wanted to say, I think that this is going to be kind of the heart of the government's case. these text messages the day of the 18th. Whether the government can tie these text messages to Durk directly, and whether they can tie this text right here, I think, is going to be critical. On August 18th, using a cellular phone ending in 9595, defendant Banks texted co-conspirator 3, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." And apparently this is the same time as co-conspirator 3 was booking these flights for, who was it? Lindsey Jones. I'm sorry. Yeah, Lindsey and Jones. The same time Lindsey and Jones were getting their flights booked. So I think really the timeline of these text messages and whether the context of the text messages is going to be critical. If the government has Durk texting the purchaser of the tickets immediately prior to the purchasing of the tickets, and there's no extenuating context, it'll be tough for Durk to get past. I think this is the strongest evidence that the government has, is this sequence right here. Of course, I will say that I find it odd that Durk texted co-conspirator 3, "Don't book flights under names involved with me," and then co-conspirator 3 immediately booked the flights under a name involved with him. But that could just be the case, that not a criminal mastermind situation. But I don't know. We'll see. Using a credit card ending in 2039, co-conspirator 3 purchased airline tickets for Wilson, Lindsey, Houston, and Jones, and conspirator 2 to travel from Chicago to San Diego. Saw something about his DMs just came out. Yeah, there was some DM stuff. I haven't looked at it, but I know that was the case. On the 18th, co-conspirator 3 confirmed to Wilson via text that defendants Wilson, Lindsey, and Jones had the same ticket confirmation. Wilson, Lindsey, Houston, and Jones and 2 flew to San Diego. They traveled towards Los Angeles County in a car to meet with Grant. And again, there's no banks here in any of this. So these text messages I think are going to be critical. On the 18th, Grant purchased 4 black ski masks from a sporting goods store in Los Angeles County using cash. A little incriminating. On the 18th, using a credit card ending in 1015, Grant rented a hotel room for the co-conspirators in Los Angeles, the Universal City Hotel. On the 18th, Grant met with the co-conspirators and provided Lindsey and Jones and co-conspirator 2 with firearms, including a firearm that had modified to operate as a fully automatic machine gun using a device known as a switch. And again, there's no banks in here. On the 18th, Grant provided 2 cars for defendants Wilson, Lindsey, Houston, Grant, and Jones, and 2 to find, track, and kill Quando, a white BMW, from a rental company in Los Angeles County, and a white Infiniti. See, this is what I'm talking about. YSL had the white Infiniti. They couldn't really agree on what model, but from those who followed YSL, Thug allegedly rented a white Infiniti for Lil Rudy to go after, what's his real name? No, Donovan Thomas. Just going to do a partner with this mask. Yes. On the 18th, the defendants, not Banks, co-conspirator 2, traveled in the BMW Infiniti to a hotel in DTLA, where TB was staying. To find, track, and kill Quando. After the co-conspirators traveled to the hotel to attempt to kill Quando, Grant met in person with Banks to give defendant Banks an update about the co-conspirators' efforts to track and kill Quando. I think this is new. I believe this is new to the indictment. Let's see if I can... What number is this? 19. I think this is part of... Yeah, I think this is new to the third and fourth indictment. So I'm guessing that comes from the plea agreement between Grant and between Grant and the government. So I believe this is new information in the third superseding indictment. So certainly, I imagine Brian will be questioning Grant, Bonnie, about the substance of his plea agreement. But again, this is also certainly very strong evidence for the prosecution. Although it's interesting that it came after the plea agreement. Okay, on the 19th, which is the day of the killing 4 years ago, using the BMW Infiniti, defendants Wilson, Lindsay, Houston, Grant, and Jones and co-conspirator 2 traveled to the hotel where Quando was staying. On the 19th, using the BMW Infiniti, Wilson, Grant, Jones followed and tracked Quando's Escalade to a marijuana dispensary located on Flower Street in Los Angeles. I actually lived on Flower Street in Los Angeles when I was in law school. But this was after law school for me. On the 19th, using the BMW Infiniti, the co-conspirators followed and tracked his black Escalade to a clothing store on Melrose Avenue in West Hollywood. The below image shows the BMW and Infiniti following the black Escalade, in which Quando and Robinson were passengers. As you can see here, get a BMW, get the white Infiniti. On the 19th, the co-defendants tracked the Escalade to a gas station located on Beverly Boulevard in Los Angeles, the Beverly Center. Not actually in Beverly Hills, but it's close by. I worked like a couple blocks from the Beverly Center for a while before YSL happened and I had to quit my job. Yeah, I worked over there. Holy Resolution. Is that flock footage? I don't know. The spot on Fluck was around in LA at that point. Yes, Aaron, I had to. You think I'm just going to let Adrian get away with that nonsense? Come on. Come on. Adam? No. No. I'd certainly be richer if I hadn't quit that job, but, you know, working in Beverly Hills, a view of the ocean, the Hollywood sign, obviously I got tired of that. Got tired of all that money. Oh, man, what did I do with my life? Okay. Defendant Houston drove the Infiniti to an alley behind the gas station, parked the vehicle so that defendants Lindsay and Jones and co-conspirator 2 could attempt to murder Quando. On the 19th, at the Beverly Center gas station, Lindsay, Jones, and 2, so I'm guessing Houston was the driver. And again, he's being tried later. Houston was the driver. Lindsay Jones, co-conspirator 2, exited the slider and used the firearms procured by Grant, including the switch, to shoot at the car, striking and killing Robinson, who was standing next to the car while Quando was inside the gas station. The images below show defendants Lindsay and Jones and 2 firing their guns at Quando's Escalade. This pixel here and this pixel here are the shooters. I think there are 3 shooters there, right? There are only 2 guys there, right? I don't know. Anyway, I'm guessing that as is often the case, there'll probably be higher resolution and better footage at trial. But, yeah. Are there 3 people here? There we go. On the 19th, in the slider, driven by Houston, Lindsay Jones and 2 fled the alley after the shooting. Again, I should clarify that TB, aka Quando Rondo, was the target and Robinson just happened to be there. I think it was a target of, they just were shooting up the car. So Quando, who was the target, actually escaped, and his cousin died. They fled the alley using credit card 1. 3 purchased airline tickets from San Diego to Chicago for the 5 co-conspirators. They flew back from San Diego. On August 20th, in a text to 9595, co-conspirator 3 sent Banks a social media post with individuals mocking TB's reaction to seeing the body removed from the Escalade. That was referenced in the song that I showed you in the second or first superseding, the first superseding indictment, the No video. I'm not going to share that, although I'm sure you can find it on social media. But obviously, Quando was upset seeing his cousin. He was distraught seeing his cousin. And it was on the news, which is unfortunate. But again, this isn't the most compelling to me. I mean, there's no doubt that, no question that Banks had a feud with Quando. On the 21st, in a text to 9595, co-conspirator 3 sent Banks a social media post about the shooting. Again, this isn't particularly compelling to me. 21st, Grant traveled to a Verizon store in Woodland Hills to purchase new burner phones, including a number ending 3853. Is it the same white car? It's Rudy's car. It's funny. It's actually somebody that's just going around the country in a white Infiniti killing rappers just to incriminate other rappers. It's the same guy. The 22nd, he stopped using 9595 and started using 3853. You could argue that that's strong evidence of knowledge of guilt. Again, it's also 4 days later, so I don't know about that. On the 6th, 23, Banks sent a group text message to his co-conspirators. So this is almost a year later, which is quite a gap, to be honest. But in any event, on the 6th, Banks sent a group text to his co-conspirators, including Wilson, stating Deesky beat his murder. He's going to be more and more dangerous. Okay. On August 4th, sent a group text to co-conspirators, including Wilson, stating that a suspected informant and co-conspirator was just ready to snitch. Clear as day. He can tell soon. I mean, I guess. I would assume there's some context to that text that we need to see. Same group text. Wilson, the spotty thief can break us down. A co-conspirator, unidentified co-conspirator, my favorite kind. Beware of everybody, not just the informants. On August 4th, Banks reassured, as long as we don't break, they can tell him whatever. Definitely incriminating. But again, the fact that a year had passed, to me anyway, makes it less clear that he's talking about this specific incident, the incident at hand, as opposed to some other thing. Definitely not a good look. Juries aren't going to like that. On the 5th, Wilson stated, in response to a test from Wilson stating, fellas out there already playing with folks' name, Banks referenced the Enterprise's violence, stating, see, crazy, blood fellas don't slide or hurt, leaving it all up to us. Again, kind of devoid of context. Definitely referencing bad stuff, but I don't know that it's clearly about this specific case, as opposed to another case. Count 3, nor through the meat of the indictment now. There's going to be reference to count 2, but count 3, realleging A to C of the introduction. Beginning in or around November 2020, it became released on or about August 1922. That was the killing. In LA County and elsewhere, Banks, Wilson, Lizzie Houston, and others, aiding and abetting the other with the intent to kill, injure. I'm not going to read all that. Placed under surveillance with intent to kill, intimidate a person, namely Quando. Used and willfully caused the use of facilities of interstate and foreign commerce. That's the federal hook. There has to be some kind of interstate or foreign hook to make it a federal case. playing cards, cell phones, and the internet to engage in a course of conduct that placed Kwando in reasonable fear or death and attempted to cause, and would be reasonably likely to cause substantial emotional distress to Kwando, and in doing so used a dangerous weapon, namely firearms. So 3 was split into 3 and 4. I believe originally it was a single count for both Kwando and Robinson, but then in the 4th superseding indictment, they split 3 and 4 into separate counts. But it's the same count, just with different objects of the stalking. Let me see, 5. Let's see. Beginning on a date unknown, but no later than on or around November 6th. And continuing to at least in or around August 23. The co-conspirators conspired and agreed with each other to knowingly use facilities of interstate and foreign commerce, namely airplanes, cars, cell phones, and the internet. Lost my spot. With intent that the murder of Kwando be committed in violation of the laws of any state, namely the state of California, as consideration for the receipt of and consideration for a promise and agreement to pay anything of pecuniary value, namely money and downstream economic benefits, including lucrative music opportunities with OTF and placement in defendant magazine OTF music videos in violation of Title 18 USC 1958A. I'm going to pull that up really quick to make sure I'm not looking at the wrong thing. Yeah. Title of that crime, use of interstate commerce facilities in the commission of murder for hire. So this is the straight murder for hire count. It is interesting with respect to banks, and that is banks, obviously it's all of them, but as far as Durk goes, the consideration that he received, he basically killed in exchange for stuff that he gave himself. I don't know if that really works, because if the money came from banks, it's his own money. I don't know if you can hire yourself to commit murder. Obviously, it works for the other defendants. I don't think that's a structural flaw. It's just kind of a strange way to draft it. Are flock cameras legal? Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a whole other stream. I mean, I think they are legal under the current law, but I'm not a fan. I think there's a certain level of mass surveillance that runs afoul of the Fourth. Before Drew finally presented the judge with 25 witnesses, do you think one of them could be Kwando? It's certainly possible. That would be a very Brian move, certainly. I'm not as familiar with Drew, although I've never worked on any case that Drew worked on. I almost worked on the YFN Lucci Rico, actually, and he was on that, but I don't know Drew that well. It certainly 25 doesn't seem out of the question, though. In calling Kwando, I think that would be perfectly possible. I don't know why the judge would be shocked by that. I know they have some gang expert witnesses, the lyric expert that Brian used. Well, he didn't use them, but Brian was going to use in YSL. And then just fact witnesses. It'd certainly be a risk putting Kwando on the stand, because given that he has no love for Durk. But yeah, I mean, certainly he has knowledge of the events in question. So the murder for hire count, they just reiterate all the ones we read through in count 2, which all this stuff. But same allegations, just repurposed for murder for hire. Count 6 was severed. So it's not going to be in this trial. But in any event, we got a date unknown, but no later than on around the 18th. Getting to on or about the 19th within CD Cal and elsewhere. The defendants, knowing these facilities of interstate and foreign commerce, namely airplanes, cars, cell phones, the internet, with intent that the murder of TB be committed in violation of the laws of California, resulting in the death of SR. So basically the same set of facts as the others. Count 7 also severed. I believe this is the machine gun count. 30. They're still getting 30 minutes for opening. That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, hey, Mel. Hey, you already know all this stuff, Mel. You know more than I do. I'm not going to be giving any new information. I don't know. I mean, I've actually been wondering to myself, like, what acronym Brian's going to make up for Lil Durk. Like, obviously, Durk is actually Durk's name. It's not an acronym, like truly humble under God. But I've been wondering, like, what you could come up with for Durk, like what DURK. Could be used, like, I don't know. I'll have to think about that one some more. Want to hear my take? Yeah, I don't really even have that much of. I guess my main take. I'll just say this is a. I don't know if this one's being tried, but it's a possession of a machine gun charge. My main take is that I think a lot of it's going to come down for Durk specifically. I think the others are likely in some trouble, assuming that that like this evidence is as solid as it seems. The others are likely cooked. But I think that as for Durk, I think it's going to come down to the text messages. Very likely going to come down to the texts. I don't think this is all that convincing to juries. But yeah, these ones here. I think this is really the heart of the case. The text between co-conspirator 3 and Durk, or the communications between co-conspirator 3 and Durk, with respect to the booking of the tickets from Chicago to San Diego. I think that's the vast majority of the case. I don't think the lyrics are going to get the prosecution anywhere. I don't really think that jurors are, based on what we've seen, I don't think juries buy into the lyric evidence as a general rule of thumb. And then some of the generally incriminating texts towards the end here, like this stuff, like DCBD's murder, you're going to be more dangerous. That's bad, but I don't know if it relates specifically to the Quando beef or any of the events surrounding it. Maybe more likely to in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I think a Los Angeles jury is going to be less credulous. And again, like some of this definitely seems like it's relating to potential criminality, but I don't know if it's relating to this specific these specific charged events. He paid for them to fly out there. Yeah, the one thing it's not in this indictment, but the credit card, the OTF credit card. Hold on, let me see. Let me pull up my notes. This is reviewing other documents. So the credit cards, I believe, were under something called Astronaut Sounds LLC. And there were several people that had credit cards. One ending 1015. I think the one in the issue here was in Banks's name, but used by Kevon Grant. Dirk's dad had a card. There was a manager named Ola Ali. He had a card. Did he report the card stolen? No, I don't believe so. But yeah, I think the credit card, I think this is really the heart of the case here. Also, I'm interested in hearing about the face-to-face meeting. Yeah, this one right here. This is also interesting. I'm interested in hearing about this because I believe this is new in the fourth superseding indictment. Interesting to see how credible this is. And my other thought is that this is kind of, I think it's kind of, I was initially kind of hesitant to like make the YSL comparisons because it's kind of lazy, but it like at a certain point the comparisons are just they're apt and not lazy, and I think that this is. I think we're at that point with the witnesses. Like, if you were to take the state's characterization of the witnesses in YSL pretrial, you would think, "Wow, this is a really strong case." But then when they got on the stand, they were not. The witnesses were not as advertised. Either the witnesses said, "I never actually said that," and the state is lying. And to be clear, the state was lying. Or the witnesses would just say, "I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here," over and over again until they were off the stand. Or the witnesses would give additional context that undercut the state's point. Yeah, exactly, YP. You hear stuff and then it's a flop. So, again, I think witness credibility is going to be huge. Whether it be Giovanni Grant, OCF Jam. I think Jones is the other one. I haven't really seen much about him, but I assume he's going to be relevant to probably the shooting in particular. I believe he was involved in the shooting. But yeah, it's an interesting case. Very much up in the air. How old are you exactly? Oh, Woody, man. I'm excited to see all the Georgia Bureau of Investigation experts testify. You know, I love my GBI experts. What else? What else do I think about this case? Yeah, I'm just excited. I would say that the number of times the prosecution's changed its theory of the case is concerning. Has Dirk Lawyer seen the other guy plead yet? I don't think he's actually pled out yet. I think he probably has some kind of tentative plea agreement. What else? I'm gonna do my best to see like if I can get close to Brian Steele and like become his friend during the case. That's obviously always the goal. That's the main goal for me. Try not to fanboy too hard. Yeah, I'll be there. I don't know if I'll be there every day, but I'll definitely stop by. You know, that was actually my first, the first courthouse I actually appeared in as a lawyer when I became a lawyer was that courthouse. It's a really beautiful courthouse. If it's the one I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. I will, Aaron. Don't worry about that. Let me see if I can find you. Okay, if it's nice, it's definitely the one I'm thinking of. Maybe it's this one.
This is Christopher Hawthorne. I'm the...
Yeah, here we go. We can watch this real quick. Wrapping up, I'll be probably end the stream in a second, but we can take a look at... let me see here.
architecture critic for Moore, Owings, and Merrill, and it takes the form offices on the lower floors,
like the main
and
lobby here. There's a
near
huge
the top of the building. Interior element of the
they're not really showing the part that's... Oh yeah, here it is.
Sense of how much
it's like
sunlight comes pouring through the skylight at the top of the building, and you can also see from this vantage point one of the public art pieces in the building. This is a commission, and together they're
I actually lived like across the street from this courthouse before I moved.
Two things that you can see. One is some landmarks of downtown Los Angeles. You can see the LA Times building.
Is there anything else I want to show? Where are you? How does LA compare in size to New York? Like by population, or?
Building itself peeking out in one direction, and the skyscrapers.
It's a little smaller size-wise. LA County has, I think, like 7 million people. Oh, area? It's way bigger. Yeah. Yeah, LA County is, first of all, it's probably too big. But the LA city is quite large. It's more of a sprawl than New York. And LA doesn't really have a downtown the same way New York does. I mean, there is like a downtown Los Angeles, but there aren't a ton of people that live there. And it's really dead at night, actually. Like, some of the cheapest place to live in Los Angeles is downtown, which is why I live there. Initially, when I was working downtown. Let's see. Any other Durk stuff I like that I want to show you guys? The order entered yesterday. The 44B. Evidence motion to exclude. I don't need to go through all this, but just some of the evidence that's going to be brought in. 911 call. Let me see. Body camera footage. Admitted as excerpted per government's proposal. I'm guessing it's excerpted to avoid too much graphic content. Mel might know better than I do. We get some TMZ footage. So always a sign of a good, strong case when you have TMZ footage. Additional excerpts of body camera footage. Again, non-graphic screenshots. That makes sense. 4 autopsy photos. Admit as third photo only. That's a common thing you'll see in cases where the prosecution does have to prove that the decedent is actually dead, which is why you get the autopsy photos. But they'll oftentimes try to get multiple photos in, which can be prejudicial. That came up in YSL several times. So admitting as to one photo is reasonable. Excerpt of messages between Durk and co-conspirator 3. Something called the Quadrado Challenge. Surveillance photos. Excerpt of unreleased Red Man video. Let me see. Screenshot from $1 million worth of game podcast featuring Durk with large amount of cash. Judge State doesn't do a lot of murder cases. There's a lot of civil rights where officers kill and his tendency is minimal autopsy. Yeah, that's definitely the best practice. Yeah, I will say that there are some. No, I don't need to get into the graphic nature of autopsy photos. There are some that are extremely prejudicial to the jury. I'll just leave it at that. But people can be incredibly savage and do incredibly savage things. And some of those photos even, I mean, I'm pretty jaded on this stuff. Like, there isn't that much that bothers me, but some of these photos even get to me. I don't know if like this would be one of those, but they can be tough to handle. And I guess just crime footage in general. It can really get to you and definitely make you irrational. Video allegedly taken during podcast filming featuring multiple individuals with firearms. Excluded. That's definitely good. That seems like it would be prejudicial. Will you do update once a week? Yeah, I could do that. Probably more. If I go in, I'll probably just do a stream afterwards. Yeah, for sure. Let me see. Compilation of photos. Screenshot of Vaughn wearing OTF no blockchains in Vaughn's Welcome to My Neighborhood video. Okay. Photograph of Banks Wilson and others with cash. Like, this is just very circumstantial. Video of Banks and others during the filming, it pissed me off. Video depicting Banks, Bond, and PW2. This is Kevon Grant, aka Vonnie, who has presumably taken a plea deal. Is Big Durk on the witness list? I don't know, actually. I wouldn't be surprised. Mel would know better than I do. Yeah, I will note that none of these people, none of this evidence relates to their choice of pants. As we know in the YSL case, there was a co-defendant that was, his choice of pants was, of course, one of the overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. So anytime you don't have pants-based offenses, it's definitely good for your case. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I'm still mad. I will die mad about that. No pants-based acts as far as I can tell. I'm scrolling really fast to make sure I don't have any notes in here. It's been a while since I've even looked at this. It might be this. Nope. There we go. I will say, I think that these are like a stretch of some of the weakest overt acts, because it's not just pose for a photo released on social media wearing pants with the letters OTS with the caption OGs with a green snake emoji. Like, that's one thing. But like, also, they're not even like his emojis. Like, there's somebody else's emojis. They're the emojis of an unidentified co-poster. And how are you going to rely upon emojis by an unidentified co-social media poster? I don't know about that. And then, of course, this is the infamous $24 million on a fellow's head. Y'all just start bringing me the money. And a certain investigative Everito claimed that this was in reference to putting a hit out on somebody when it was actually about literally putting a 24 million diamonds in somebody's head. But I'm getting sidetracked. This is the evidence here. Let's see. Photograph of Houston and Banks' brother with text overlaid, admitted as redacted or substituted. We have DA Academics. My favorite DJ Academics. My bad. Sorry, he just keeps popping up in these prosecution cases. DJ Academics, not DA Academics. Dated May 23rd. Ray, NBA Youngboy, Max Shart's favorite rapper, King Von, Slide for Von. Excerpts of Banks' interview with Academics. We got Tekashi 6ix9ine. Like, I gotta say, if your case involves Tekashi 6ix9ine, it's not a good sign. Let's see. Photograph of PW2 with Vaughn. That's Grant, right? Screenshot of music video for Block Is Hut is included. Seen It All is excluded. Federal Freestyle. Yes, WTF Jam. That's a song. Screenshot from phone admitted. Quando Rando. Anyway, I'm not saying that this is all of the evidence in the case, but a little tangential. Let's see, just scanning through the filing, see if there's anything I want to add. Probably not. I think that'll probably be it for me. Is this the... Oh, this is actually the first judge I appeared before. In J. Risha. Yeah, I think that'll be it for me. How do you think the trial will go? I have no idea. I think it'll probably... It seems like the case against the non-Durk defendants is quite strong. Again, just taking the prosecution at their word. It's hard to say. It's going to come down to witness reliability, I think. And also the degree of context to the text messages. But I really think the text messages are going to be the strongest evidence. And we need to see the full text change to know how strong it'll be. I think there's a chance that this case... Oh, that's actually one point I meant to make earlier. I saw a lot of people online talking about the 35 witnesses, like that's a sign that the case is strong. And it can be, but it's also can be a sign that there's a lot of weak evidence and the government's trying to kind of string it all together in a way that kind of overwhelms the strength of the case, the strength of the evidence, with just a lot of it. And the risk of doing that is you get this kind of unfocused sprawl. Yeah, quality over quantity. You just get this kind of unfocused sprawl where it's just not cohesive. And jurors just get confused. And the other thing is when you have a lot of witnesses, you have a lot of opportunity for witnesses to contradict each other. That's definitely a risk when you have 35. But yeah, I don't think there'll be any huge surprises. I think it'll be like you'd expect. There'll be the cooperating co-defendants, Jones and Grant. It seems like Grant's testimony is going to be the most critical for Durk. And then the text messages. And I'm sure Brian and Drew will be arguing about the context of the text messages. But I definitely think there's a risk that this case could sprawl in a bad way for the government. Curious to see if there's anything about Durk. We didn't even talk about the Durk buying the plane tickets to go to Abu Dhabi, or was it Abu Dhabi or was it Dubai? One or the other. One of the Emirates. The day of the arrest warrant, the search warrants were executed. I don't know if that's still going to be in the case. No, we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. Definitely curious to see how it goes. Looking forward to Mel's coverage. Maybe my coverage. We'll see. But yeah, that's all I got. Gotta walk the dog. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. I know it's been a while since I streamed. Hopefully I'll do it a little bit more than I have been. If you haven't been following Mel's coverage, you should. You should also hold on. Let me show you my excellent partner's YouTube channel, so you can follow her coverage of the Carmelo Anthony case. Here we go. Wait, this is the one I wanted. Tiffany, what are you doing? There we go. This is Tiffany Adams. Tiffany Adams is my... Well, I mean, really, she's just like the best of everything. But she's my partner in the YSL case. And she also does some YouTube videos. And she's doing live coverage of the in-person coverage of the Carmelo Anthony stuff. So she's in Texas right now. She'll be covering the motion for new trial hearing tomorrow. I don't really follow the close that carefully, but I know it's kind of a hot button for people. So if you're interested in that case, you should check out our coverage. If you're not interested, you should also check it out. And of course, Cat's watching the Tupacs. There's a lot of good stuff going on right now. I would cover Lindsay Clancy, but I don't want to get death threats, so I'm staying away from that one. People are worked up about that one. I understand why. But I don't know if I could take that kind of hate. Carmelo judged as a demon. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. I know he recused himself today, which is always the safe choice. What else do we got? I got Edric Faust, I think, has his amended motion for new trial due on Friday. But I haven't heard anything about that. I was actually meaning to ask Kat about that at some point. I don't know if there's been any news on that, if he's hired another attorney yet. I'm guessing Brian Steele's not going to be filing an amended motion for new trial on Friday, given that's the day of opening statements, if not jury selection. But that one kind of fell by the wayside after the fundraising, so we'll see how that goes. I can check. On I can check too. Go! Sorry, got a little impatient there. My bad. Classing that divisive, like, yeah. Yeah, that's the sense I get about that divide, but like that's a loud 10%. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything new on Faust. Yeah, Doug's been talking about the case, the Clancy case online, and I've been seeing some of the responses that he's getting, and good Lord. So nothing new in Faust. Oh, not you. I'm curious to see. I actually think Kyle Winchester would be a really good lawyer for him. This, I think, is a very Kyle case. But we'll see. Certainly more than enough money to hire somebody. So we'll see how that goes. Is there anything else I'm following right now? Let's see. Clancy, Tupac, Dirk. Hopefully some news on YSL soon. Oh, right. I'm doing a stream on Wednesday of next week. Most likely, if I'm not at Dirk. There's a Georgia Supreme Court case. Great. I Google it, and what I get is my own tweet from a week ago. That's fantastic. Sarah Grace Patrick. Oh yeah, is that coming up soon? It is winning SEO, but it's frustrating when I'm like looking. This actually happens sometimes. I'll be like looking for a specific tweet, and I just get my own results, my own tweets. Like is that the girl who's on TikTok? Yes. As far as I know. Delayed until unknown. Yeah, I thought her trial was not originally, but it was going to be an August trial, I thought. Got continued, yeah. Yeah, there's a religious group called Soldiers of Christ, and apparently they like imprisoned somebody, and they starved and were beaten or something, but the RICO was dismissed on a general demurrer. And it is a Gwinnett County case. Michael Carlson of Carlson on evidence by Carlson with Carlson is involved in the prosecution. Some of you will remember him from YSL. I'm a big fan. But this will be argued on Wednesday. This is Suri Chada Jimenez, who's a YSL lawyer. Somebody named Tiffany Adams, a defense attorney, commenting on the case. You can look up the RICO case if you're interested. But I'll probably cover this on Wednesday. And Andrew Fleischman has a Court of Appeals oral argument on that Wednesday too, on the 26th. So I'll probably stream his argument. So some stuff coming up next week. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that's all I have. Real hidden case novel, Buster Robbins out of Ann Arbor. Ooh. That's because you wrote a book. Well, I mean, as Doug said, it's the highest law in the land, Aaron. It was a Buster Robbins. There's been some a 1989 cold. Oh, there's a Georgia cold case that somebody is from like 1990 that's being tried. I gotta look into that. I know the lawyer. I don't think it's being streamed though. Drummond case. Undercover CIA. Ali Mata thinks it has teeth. That's a new sentence. Dropping jewels for tick? That's a thug. So, oh my goodness. From Canton Township? It's another Canton? This is the third Canton. Jeez. Beverly Ravel, 30 is a mother from Canton Township, killed in 1989. DNA match. Is this going to be another... Is it like DNA or is it DNA? Interesting. Look into that one too. But okay, I got to take the dog out and make dinner. Why do I read the comments? My goodness. Have you seen the GA Supreme Court will stop hearing murder cases next year? I've not heard that. Is it like it'll go to the Court of Appeals? Because I could see that making some sense. Oh, interesting. Yeah, in Georgia, for those of you who don't know, in Georgia, okay, yeah, that makes sense. In Georgia, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction over all appeals from death penalty cases, or not death penalty, murder cases. So, even like just an ordinary direct appeal from a murder case will go to the Supreme Court, which is somewhat impractical, somewhat unusual, instead of going to the Court of Appeals first. So actually, I can show you what happens with that. Is you end up with almost all the cases that the Georgia Supreme Court decides being murder cases. This was a habeas, but all of these are murder cases. They say they have too many. Yeah. Like these are all murder cases, I think. I read all, yeah, these were all murder cases. So they have like all these murder cases, and then this is an attorney discipline. And these are all murder cases, and then there's like attorney discipline, a habeas. Maybe they should stop prosecuting dumb kids. Yeah. And then this is like all of their civil cases. Going back down here, I think these are all murder cases. This was, yeah, that was a felony murder case. I covered this one. But almost everything they do is murder. So that I can see that making some sense. That's not to say that murder cases won't go to the Supreme Court, just that they'll go through the Court of Appeals first. Yeah, same thing here. DeQuavion Malcolm, I'm still mad about this one. This is a Brian Steele case. I'll tell you why I'm mad about it too. Why are you saying the question is a close one and then deciding against the defendant? That just makes things worse. What's happening to AI misconduct? Yeah, so that's the case with the blonde lady with the gun. What's her face? Can't think of it. Yeah, so the motion for new trial went back to the trial court and was denied, and then Andrew reappealed it. I don't know if it's been docketed yet, but it's going back to the Supreme Court on the same footing. Hannah Payne, that's the one. All right, I'm actually going now. Blonde with a gun, cat. I would never snitch on cat like that. Unless I was in trouble, then I definitely would. All right, I'm calling it a day. I'm tired. That was fun, though. I gotta do these again. I'll take less of a break this time. Thanks for watching, everybody. All right, I'm actually leaving now. How can I say? I'm a snitch. No, I would never. All right, later, guys. Thanks for